Common ground. Find common ground.
Football.
Yes.
I say that. I say that like flippantly, but it often is sport.
It really is,
It's
yes.
sport and things like that, which often brings people together where there's no it's where you can all unite and support
Well,
something.
look, I was married to a French woman during the 1998 World Cup, and I'm a Brazil fan, and I'll tell you why. But I've always been a Brazil fan. I struggle when Brazil are playing England, just because of the nostalgia about it. But when they fielded that team, which was 85% black, it changed the DNA in France of racial politics, the way people spoke about being French and what French means, because being French was largely speak French like the Académie Française wants you to, and be white. That was, eat these things. That was what Frenchness was about, which is not the case with us. I mean, there may be a bit of, well, if you're black, can you really be English? I get that. But we don't have but you eat that. So you can't be, and you have that funny thing in you say this, you speak like this, so you can't be. We accept that people are British because they're here and they are involved. Whereas in France, it's all about having a certain cultural identity, and that changed. It changed France. Everybody thought it was going to be very short-lived, but it did. It changed it permanently. The way it thought about it. And it stopped being like, oh, these black kids, they don't even sing the anthem properly. That was what they were saying the whole time.
Yeah, well, it's the same as being a Chelsea fan. We had a lot.
Really?
We had a lot.
You're not going to equate this with being a Chelsea fan. You're always victims. One of my best friends is a Chelsea fan.
We had a lot of racist fans, as you know. Going up to
true.
Going up to Chelsea years ago, they used to sell on Fulham Broadway. They used to sell British Bulldog, which was a National Front newspaper. Yeah. They used to sell that. And they used to go up there, and I always used to say it was weird because there was no internet around at the time, so people were selling their wares. So you'd have was it called the Red Star or something? The Communist.
Yes, the Morning Star.
Morning Star.
Yeah.
And then there was the people who sold the C&D as well.
Yes.
And they'd all stand up the Fulham Road, and I'd feel sorry for the C&D lot because it was just wall-to-wall skinheads back then and casuals and stuff going up, and they'd be flogging this stuff. And Paul Cannavale, it's well documented, would get in the Chelsea team, our black player, and they would stand at the door of the pubs and go, you can't go to the game because they've picked Paul Cannavale in the team and stuff like that. It was that bad. But eventually, as all the players started coming through and you ended up with people like Ruud Gullit and everything else, I think people generally, there was still obviously a racist element there, but people started changing their views. Yes. An ex-girlfriend of mine, her dad was, he was terribly racist. And then one day he's going, you're going to watch the Bruno fight, Tim? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, oh, come on, I think Bruno can do it. I'm like, hold on. Whoa, you can't have it both ways, And eventually...
How did he justify it, though? Because I'm sure he did justify it.
He's one of us.
Yeah, okay.
He's one of us. That's what he used to say, he's one of us. But it's just that weird moment in time where he couldn't quite get his head, but one of us is all right.
Yeah.
He's fine.
I wonder, this is probably not a conversation we're going to have now, but I want to know, in his mind, what that meant, what one of us meant. Because obviously I couldn't find anybody more British than Frank Bruno. I mean, the way he spoke, the sort of strange mixture of self-esteem and grandeur, like we have with our English, football team, that we think they're really shit. They're really not great. But we could win. We could win. Frank Bruno had that kind of He wasn't one of those American boxers who was just like all front. He was a very British kind of boxer.
I wonder if the boxers know how important they've been to culture in this country.
I don't
race
know.
Relations. Because before that there was Conte. What was his name?
John Conte.
John Conte. He used to win for us all the time, didn't he?
Yes, he's terrific, yeah.
And so I suppose all these guys who were there fighting, literally fighting for our country, like in a boxing ring, but people were going, they're one of us, and it probably.
But I think it took I think you're right. But I think it took time. I think when you think about Cyril Regis, the late great. And his, Luther Blissett and all those incredible guys, I think about what it's like to be the first black footballer at West Ham, What would that have been like coming out, be that first black footballer at Chelsea, and know that even your own supporters don't necessarily... agree with you or want you to be there? That must have been so difficult for those guys.
People should I think Paul Cannavale's done well. I know he's done a documentary and he's written a book about the hard times he had emotionally and mentally about it, the depression he suffered from it all and everything. because we all loved him, but the older generation didn't. They were all looking at it going, we don't want him playing for us. Oh, it's just so hard. You're right. Laurie Cunningham, Cyril Regis, all those guys.
What they
went through.
Mentally.
People would actually throw bananas at them. I mean, how sick is that?
Yeah. And I don't know whether it demotivates you or does the opposite. I would imagine it did the opposite for these guys, because I think if it had demotivated them, none of them would have survived it. And I'm sure there were footballers who didn't survive it, right? I mean, those are the ones who broke through. There must have been hundreds who just went,
I don't want it,
to hell with this.
Yeah.
If I'm being vilified by my own fans, they're shouting at me, then why am I playing for these guys? I'm getting injured here, what am I doing? I'm glad that that's changed, but it did take time. And it took a relentlessness as well. That's the other thing, Tim. It took wave after wave after wave of these players to come in to finally change it. And you look at the English team, and it's like a picture of Britain.
Could I just explain the play for anyone who doesn't know? You narrate the play. It changes every night, and you tell the story. So you're going into character, then you're coming out and engaging the audience, going through what's it called? The fifth wall? Fourth wall, sorry.
God, I didn't know there was a fifth one. I've got more work to do. Damn.
Sorry,
I finally destroyed one of them. 1, 2, and 3 were very tricky. Fourth, we thought we'd gone over. Apparently, there's a fifth.
Sorry, the fourth wall. You engage the audience. You talk to them. It's a different play. But in America, as we all know, the audiences can talk back because they talk at the cinema screen. They just join in, and that's what was happening with your play, wasn't it? Over there, people were joining in and talking to you whilst you were actually performing.
Yeah, which I don't mind. I mean, I set it up literally, joking apart, to break that down because I wanted people to meet Sancho. The first black man to vote. It can sound very heavy already. Like, how did he do that? It must have been really hard. I bet he was, beaten up or whatever. But his story's stranger than that.
But he's English. How's he appealing to American audience?
Well, the thing is, that's exactly what I thought when I first went there. I was like, my first gig was at the Kennedy Center, and it was like 450 kids, because they don't let adults in the theater with kids, because the adults complain that the kids make too much noise. So I had 450 American kids making the cacophony, and I was like, why am I doing this first thing, 11:30 on a Friday morning? Why am I performing in front of kids first? And I go out there, and honestly, they were one of the most attentive audiences, and some of them were really young, almost too young for the play, like 10. But what they got from it was this boy, because he starts off as a boy, was practically abused and beaten and dismissed, ends up being this amazing guy who can play music and sing and dance with one of us, and then has loads of kids and is really happy and votes. That's amazing. And when I asked them those questions, that's what was coming back for me, that how he came from this. So they all understand that. A lot of them understand it, because a lot of them are sons and daughters or grandsons and granddaughters of immigrants. So that story of heroism through the odds, they really got. But the vote thing was the thing that surprised me, because at the end he has to find his papers. And when he does, not that much of a spoiler because we know he voted, when he does find it, the audience started cheering, and I didn't know what to do with that. Because it's a moment of tension, but I didn't know how insightful it was about their condition until the Q&A afterwards, when these 4 African-American ladies, probably about 80 odd, got up and went, son, that's not history, that's happening to us today. We need to find our papers to prove that we're citizens and we can vote. That's happening to black people today. And the whole audience went, ah. But I began to realize that the play, its subject matter was more than just, hey, look, black people were here before 1948, which is kind of my point. Black people should feel at home here, not feel like they were strangers, like we often do. It was more than that, apparently. It was now. It was about taking that right now, about being able to vote now, and having a say now, and not being silenced. And I caught the fire, really, then. And when I brought it to London, I knew exactly, or I thought I knew exactly what its effect would be. And it was much more than I thought.
How many people, what percentage of black people vote in America?
I don't know what the percentage is who vote. I know that
is it low,
only
though?
80 odd, less than, over 80% of Americans do not have a passport. And if you're asking people to have a photo ID, then most of our go-to photo IDs will be a passport. Nowadays, obviously, we have driving licenses with pictures in it. But the Americans don't have driving licenses. I mean, they have them, but not a lot of people get them.
Right.
They don't. Yes, you can say just get your act together and get a driving license, but because the Republicans largely know that that's a thing in the working class and immigrant community of not getting their papers sorted out, stuff like that, because dealing with officialdom is difficult for them, for very good reasons, they tend not to have those driving licenses. And then they go, oh, well, you can have a gun license. Well, yeah, I can get a gun, but am I going to go and get a gun license? Probably not. Right. So even though it's their own fault in that you need to get your official stuff done, there is also a knowledgeable disenfranchising of many, many communities, the African community and the Hispanic community and the working class community who vote largely, who did vote largely Democrat. So that play then becomes about, empowering people to say if he can vote at that point, with all that he was going through and who he was, his status, do your level best to vote. And at the end of Harlem, at the end of each show in Harlem, we did a voter registration drive, which was just great.
Brilliant.
For me. Yeah,
You're going back, aren't you? For
2020. They've invited me. It's informal, but they've invited me back in 2020 to do, because it's the presidential election year, to do various theatres in New York.
Do you think this is one of those plays, because you have worked really hard at it and it's your thing? Do you think it's one of those plays that you've got there forever and every couple of years, because it's so relevant, isn't it, now, and it will carry on being relevant, that you'll keep bringing it out, taking it out, finding somewhere to go and put it on for a few weeks or something? Is it one of those? Yeah,
because I think at the moment its power is the vote. But I remember I fully finished it in 2007, 2010, that kind of era. So that wasn't why I wrote it. I didn't write it for that. I wrote it to meet him and to say, this is Black Britain. This is one of your Black Britons. This is one of us. It will have a resonance when people start thinking about other subjects. It will resonate with people who are concerned about death and their family and the legacy of their children. It will resonate with people about acting and about the creative possibilities for ethnic minorities, because there's that in it. It will resonate with people about what the status of an immigrant is and how that person can feel part of a country, even though that country often pushes them away, and how you can still fight for your corner as being a British citizen and being part of this country's story. So there's going to be a lot, I think, over the years that will pop out from the play. I hope so, anyway.